we want you to lose the clothes. Like, we want you to forget about closing.
And I thought you meant
lose your clothes.
Oh my gosh, I am sorry. Oh my God.
I saw you look at each other. I'm thinking.
For the record, I did not think that. Gina took it there.
Gina. She said lose the clothes. I don't know. I'm sorry.
If you feel more like your authentic self, as long as it's not a video call, then you could lose the clothes, I guess.
Hey, Warners, welcome to another episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About.
The podcast that makes business sexy again.
I'm Gina Tremarco, Master Sales Trainer and Coach at Sales Gravy.
And I'm Rachel Pitts, the Singing Lender.
Woohoo! It's another episode, but this time we are in person. Although we've had a couple of those recently because we stop. You're just like, there's all kinds of shiny things in here. We're not used to being A, together, and B, at the Sales Gravy Studios. This is Studio Blue. Totally excited to be here to do a bunch of podcasts, recordings, and interviewing Outbound speakers, which today's speaker, Bernadette McClelland. Ooh, I got it right.
She's all the way in Australia, mate.
She's the Oprah Down Under, according to Jeb Blunt.
Yeah. And does that make us less Oprah?
I don't know. But let's talk a little bit about Bernadette. I'll you know what? You can read her bio in our show notes. I'm not going to go into her whole bio today. I just want to do a couple takeaways from this episode of what you got out of this episode from Bernadette.
I immediately think of all of Gina's misinterpretations of her adorable Australian accent. Was my first takeaway.
Oh my God. She must hate me. I mean, I literally...
No, she doesn't hate you. You're just funny. But I will say...
I was misinterpreting things.
I think my biggest takeaway from this conversation with Bernadette is that when we're selling, a lot of times, and I know I'm very guilty of this, we think more about the beginning of how the beginning of that conversation is going to go and the end, how the end and the closing is going to go. And we forget about the main part of the conversation, which is the middle. So she talks a lot about that and gives some clarity on that. It's very interesting.
Really about having conversations that to me are more, she talks about conscious selling and conscious
as opposed to unconscious.
I called it unconscious. Selling. I know it's been a long day, but to me that's really about being more human, and I think we forget to do that. And she tells a great story about how she started picking up the phone and making calls, and I think when you hear it as a salesperson, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I've been complicating this. And that's the big takeaway I got out of this episode. Plus, back yourself up, right? Back yourself up. I don't know. I kept screwing up I kept messing up everything that she said in her adorable Australian accent. So enjoy this episode with
Bernadette McClelland.
Exactly. Awesome. So excited to have you here with us.
Me too.
Welcome, Bernadette.
It was totally worth getting up at 3:00 in the morning for you.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't sleep. So I got up and I started to do some work. Like, seriously, I'll tell you, it was because I was so excited.
Yay. That's such a compliment. Did you start drinking the Baileys that early or was it after that?
No, I was eyeing the bottle off though. But no. I've kept that for us.
I love me some Baileys. When you said Baileys, So for anybody listening to this episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About with our special guest, Bernadette you say it, Bernadette.
Bernadette McClelland.
That.
You should just let me say the names from now on because you ruin them every time.
But she says it
it's
so...
McClelland. It's not that hard.
Did you hear how she said it, though?
She said it Australian style.
I know. It was really cool. Thank you. So for those listening to us, Bernadette's in Australia. And at the time of this recording, it is 7 a.m. her time, 5 p.m. our time. And there's no really easy way to make these time zones work. But thank you for getting up so early to be on our show.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, this is a good time, actually, because it doesn't cut into your day.
This is true. And you're an Outbound speaker, and in common with us, even more important, and Jeb's not here to run from us, but you're the other Oprah.
I am. He said to me, I want you to be Oprah Down Under. Uh-huh.
And he told me he wanted me to be Oprah. And then, of course, I just made Rachel Oprah, too. So it's a conference of Oprahs.
I'm like Stedman. I'm not really Oprah. I'm Stedman.
Yeah, Stedman's a cool guy.
So we had such a lovely conversation the first time we talked before you came to our podcast. And we were going through your bio that's on the Outbound website, as well as the bio we received from you. And you consider yourself gutsy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we got a bigger question for you along the lines of gutsy.
Would you, Bernadette, consider yourself a woman your mother warned you about?
Oh, I reckon. Because my husband's still being warned. And we're like nearly 30 years down the track, and my mother's still saying, I told you. I warned you. Don't come running to me. I warned you.
Perfect.
What does an Australian woman your mother warned you about, like, describe one of those women?
Gutsy.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just trying to think. Okay.
What's the gutsiest thing you've done in business?
Oh, I think just going into business. Like, seriously, I think going into business. Gutsiest thing I've done in business. Oh, you know what? I reckon when I left, I actually think back and I think, how the hell did I do it? So when I left corporate, so that was way back 2000, and I decided that, and back then, coaching wasn't a thing, right? Back in 2000, coaching was really sports coaching. Mm-hmm. And, you had your manager. And there was no coaching there. It was just kind of deal coaching. And so I was never a trainer either. And so I had this presentation. It was like only 5 minutes. And we'd just gone through this huge, mammoth, epic training program because Xerox was moving from analog to digital. And so we needed to understand the technology side of stuff and all the rest of it. And so we had to pull a topic out of a hat. And part of our assessment was doing a 5-minute talk on whatever the topic was. And I remember thinking at the time, it's like, I want to go first. I want to get this over and done with. It was a 5-minute talk on the difference between PCs and something. And I practiced for like this 5-minute talk. So anyway, I do it and I get a standing ovation. It was like only 5 minutes. And so anyway, at that point, and then I left and I went to another job and they made me do a sales meeting. And I was given all of this, well done. And then I thought to myself, well, you know what? I might join up Toastmasters. And then I thought from there, I'll join up National Speakers Association. And so from there, I decided I was good enough to become a motivational speaker. Like, that was it. There was no trainer. There was no coach in me. It was just speaking. So anyway, I decided that I would start cold calling companies to see how I could sell my motivational speaking services. And I lasted 2 years. But I look back and I think, and I got some really big gigs and I'm thinking, how the hell did I do that? And why aren't I doing it today? So that was an example of me being really gutsy like 20 years ago.
What's interesting about that is like the way you described it was I just picked up the phone and just started calling people. Yes. And it's just that easy, isn't it?
Just did it. Yeah.
It actually is that easy.
But why do we get so caught up? Why do salespeople get so caught up with like, oh, I gotta pick up the phone and call?
What if they say no?
Yeah.
What if they say we're not interested?
Do you think it has anything to do with you were so excited about motivational speaking and what you were doing that you had a passion for it, and you're like, I'm just gonna call people and see if they'll hire me?
It was definitely a passion, and there was no thought leadership behind it. There was no structure. It was inspirational. It was motivational. There was business ideas, of course, but my experience was just so limited. And I think what was driving me was this naivety and this enthusiasm. And I think sometimes we can get so caught up in getting things pitch perfect, in making sure that we are just ticking the boxes, and I think today I'm really big on conscious selling. I'm really big on the art of commercial conversations, and just being able to be yourself, and to be I know we're all ourselves anyway, but just to give yourself permission to just talk to somebody like a normal human being, instead of stepping into this where you're in your head the whole time.
Yeah.
Part of that
call up and say, "Hi, this is Rachel with Sales Gravy, and I was just checking in." And you're not in your authentic voice.
I'm following my script.
I'm following my script. Hey, and that's right. You and I spoke about impro.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's a lot to that. I love that you call it you called it unconscious conversations before you got into the art of commercial conversation. And I love
conscious selling.
Conscious selling. Okay.
It can be that too, by the way. Yeah, hang on, where's another Baileys?
I'm gonna I was liking the unconscious.
Unconscious selling sounds like you could sell in your sleep, right?
The conscious selling, and it's predicated on conscious capitalism, and this whole movement towards starting with the end in mind, which is really all about how do we help our buyers build their business growth so that they can go to market and their clients. So it's just this whole ripple effect, and how do you have those conversations that start and finish with that whole awareness and that whole and I really don't want to use the word serving. I think that word, like going in with servant's mindset and a servant's heart, there's a risk there that salespeople will overcompensate and will potentially not keep the commercial part of the conversation front and center, because that is critical.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is meshing the two of them, because we still need to sell. But it doesn't have to be as hard as sometimes we make it.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's one of our tenets, I guess you could say, is that, we want you to lose the close. Like, we want you to forget about closing. And
I thought you meant
lose your clothes.
Oh my gosh, I am sorry. Oh my God,
I saw you look at each other. I'm thinking, maybe.
For the record, I did not think that. I understood where you were coming from. Gina took it there.
She said lose the clothes. Well, earlier she was talking about what is she wearing, and she's wearing her trackies, and I don't know. I'm sorry.
If you feel more like your authentic self, as long as it's not a video call, then you could lose the clothes, I guess. But your body, like your brain, would know you're naked.
I'm so sorry. So lose the clothes, as in closing. Lose the closing part.
Closing the deal is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just to kind of reframe the way that you think about the whole sales flow. And for me, it's all about flow rather than, a linear process. Mm-hmm. And I think once you can kind of, because we've always been taught that this is the way to do it. You start here and you end with the close. Mm-hmm. You end with the closing part of the conversation. And I think that if, what we operate with is invitations, and they're strategically throughout the conversation, and it's inviting the buyer not just to sell, not just to buy the product. It's not about selling the deal. It's about advancing the conversation to the point where you've earned the right to ask and invite the buyer to work together.
The golden moment for me is when, and I'm sure you've experienced this, when the client says, this just happened to me a few days ago. The client says, okay, when can we get started? And I always giggle and go, we haven't even talked money.
I've got one of those right now too. jumping at the bit, waiting for me to drop the money. And actually, like, I closed the conversation with, hey, let's plan next steps. And I will call you tomorrow at 6 p.m. after this. And we'll talk about how to get started. She's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
That to me is that is the coolest moment in time when they say, how do we get started? And you never, ever had to ask that question.
Mm.
Then they close themselves, which is actually even better.
Yeah, so that's what we call the want-in, the want-in invitation. Ooh. So, yeah.
The want-in invitation.
Now, not wanton as in wanton woman.
Wanting. God.
So we have 4 invitations. You know, we have the buy-in, the check-in, the lead-in, and the want-in.
Oh my gosh. Bernadette, I'm so sorry.
I think we have a language barrier. But you know what's going on that Gina can't understand.
But this is entertaining. I mean, we want an entertaining show, right?
So they
never going to talk to me again.
They want in. What do they want, Bernadette?
They want transformation.
Amen.
That's true.
That's what they want. That's what we're selling. We're all selling change. We're all selling. It doesn't matter whether it's a service, a product, a printer, shoes. Everybody wants, that's what we're selling. We're selling change, and our buyers are buying our certainty.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I like that.
Our buyers are buying our certainty
for their transformation.
Yeah.
So certainty fuels cash flow. And so that's something that, I'm really big on is how do you get salespeople and sales leaders and business owners, how do you get them to buy into themselves? Because that's what we need to do first and foremost before we go down any kind of skill set track.
Well, I'm going to ask you that question. How do we get them to buy into themselves?
Well, first they got to want to. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of people out there that aren't at that point where they're ready to actually start to look at how coachable they are. It's not that they're fake or it's not that they're inauthentic. I look at every salesperson that I come across. It doesn't matter where they are on the league ladder. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're sending out the wrong emails for prospecting or whatever. A lot of them don't know what they don't know. And a lot of them have got leaders that are telling them to do it. And they're in this catch-22. And so I reckon salespeople get a really bad rap. And so I'm on the salesperson side here rather than the sales experts who are saying, salespeople are crap, salespeople are crap. So I think first and foremost, it's an awareness thing. You've got to want to be able to learn. And that's part of, conscious selling is having this mindset where you want to learn and you want to keep improving and to be able to take feedback as well. And so if we then look at, okay, how do you approach them or how do you help them outside of that? A lot of people, when I say a lot of people, I'm making a big generalization there. We've all got stories going on in our heads about different things. And, sometimes it's just a case of saying, well, okay, have a stab in the dark. What do you think's preventing you from X, Y, and Z? And what do you think most people say? If I was to say, what do you think is preventing you from hitting your numbers? What do you think most people might say?
The pandemic, everybody says they're using somebody else. There's not enough leads.
Yeah?
Myself.
Or they say, I don't know.
Yeah, they're not going to say it's them. They're not.
No, absolutely. So, with the salespeople will always give an excuse. Okay, it's human nature, and in a lot of cases, the buck doesn't stop with me. There is the pandemic or the pricing or the comp plan or whatever it might be. So I will always say to my leaders to ask the sales guys, okay, cool. If you didn't have that as an excuse, how would you make it happen? And then they may say, I don't know. And then I'll say, okay, let's play a game. Let's pretend that you do know. And what that does is it swaps us from our left brain logic, got to get this right, I don't know because I'm trying to make some kind of logical sense out of it. And when you swap it and you say, hey, let's pretend, that question or that phraseology switches you to your right brain and it goes into your imagination. And it's that whole little kids, they make up stories on the spot. But the thing is, whatever you say is what you think anyway. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yes. And you and I are very much on the same line because the last time we talked about improv and how we both use improv in the work that we do. And improv does lend itself to creativity and bringing out the child in you, to be imaginative, to be curious. I think why I'm so comfortable in sales conversations or even in podcast interviews is because I'm just naturally curious. Mm. So you'll say one thing and then I'm going to want to ask more about that one thing. And then that just continues to build and becomes very fluid in conversation. And then everybody kind of gets caught up in just having a conversation versus thinking about we're here to sell something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other part of that, and this is another thing oh my goodness, I am so passionate about salespeople, sales leaders, salespeople, let's go with them because we're talking about face-to-face client interaction. Salespeople need to know how to be coaches first and foremost, because we're not selling, we're actually coaching. And so we know that coaching is based on questions. And it's based on like real Fed income coaching. I'm not talking about sitting down with, your prospect list and, saying, okay, strategically, what are we going to do with this customer? I'm not talking about deal coaching. I'm talking about proper coaching. And for us to be able to sit in front of our clients and coach them through, because we know that when you're truly coaching, we're allowing our client or our coachee to actually come up with the answers ourselves, with themselves. So when you're able to do that with a client, they'll end up giving you the gold and you won't even need to talk about what you do. So, I'm really big on that. That's why all of our stuff is based around psychology, it's based around impro, it's based around iterations, it's based around invitations and improvisation, so we've got a whole model around this, which is the conscious selling model.
And now a word from our fabulous sponsor, Jeb Blunt at Sales Gravy.
Hi, this is Jeb Blunt. There's a reason why thousands of sales professionals and top companies across the globe hone their sales skills at Sales Gravy University. You see, Sales Gravy University is different than most learning platforms. First, we have live courses taught in a virtual classroom by our master trainers that start almost every single day. And our e-learning platform is populated with hundreds of hours of sales training content produced by some of the top sales trainers in the world, including Gina's Spontaneous Selling course, which is worth checking out. Now, I've got some good news. If you've never taken a course on Sales Gravy University, if you're a new user, you can take your very first course for free. That's any course on the platform, absolutely free. Just go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com, or click the e-learning tab in the top menu at salesgravy.com. Pick out your course, and when you check out, use coupon code FREECOURSE to get that course for free. That is free course to get your very first course for free.
Speaking of Sales Gravy University, go check out salesgravy.university and see some of the courses that I'm teaching. Just scroll through the university and click on them and you will find me and sign up. I'd love to have you there. Can we talk more about not just the conscious selling, but the commercial
conversations? The commercial conversations.
Can you talk more about that?
So commercial conversations, to master the art of commercial conversations is the number one way that you can find and build your business. And when you start to think about what commercial conversations really are, they are conversations that are way beyond sales conversations. So let me give you an example. So my book is called The Art of Commercial Conversations. And so that is based on, there's a couple of different ways you can look at it. One is the conscious selling model that, I'm spoken about. The other is, the fact that salespeople need to go to market as thought leaders, as, personal leadership and sales leadership. So it's kind of like the triad. And then when you start to break that down, the commercial conversations model in itself, if you were to draw a nine square matrix, for example, well, not for example, if you were to draw a 9 square matrix, and if you had going across the top, you had the approach to the market, the focus of your conversations, and the outcome. And then going across, you started with a transactional approach to selling. Then you would start with making contact would be your first conversation. Content would be the next one, which is, where most salespeople just kind of vomit up their product. And then you would have signing the contract as the outcome. So we all need to have the ability to know how to sell transactionally. So we need to know all of those 3 conversations, right? Then we go up a level. And so the middle layer, we call it the transitional approach, because we're transitioning up and out of being transactional. And here our approach to the market is all about connecting with our buyer, but not just making contact, truly connecting with them and also connecting with ourselves. And then our focus is consultative, the consultative sales approach. And then our outcome is very much conspiring for the success of our buyer and having those keeping in touch type conversations. So we call that transitional. And there are 3 different conversations there: connect, consult, and conspire. And then where we want to get to, we want to start having that transformational conversation. And so to truly be able to create a transformational experience for your buyer and to sell change, we need to approach the market in a state of conviction, and instead of feeling like we've got to go in and convince. So we need to look at ourselves and how we go to market in the state of conviction. The focus of our conversations is now well above consultative. It's now contextual. So now it's about how do we elevate the conversation and heighten that conversation to one that's more contextual. And then finally, the outcome, when you're selling at that transformational level, it rewrites the ABCs of selling, always be closing. It's now always be contributing. And it's always be contributing to your buyer's growth as well as your own. So it needs to be a two-pronged approach, because otherwise someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be a win-win. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of like the 9 conversations that each of the chapters in the book address.
I love it. You're going to have this book in Outbound?
Yeah, I do. I think there's going to be some hard copies there, I think. Okay. Yes, the answer is yes.
Can you tuck one away for us?
Yes, the answer is a big yes.
Yay.
I'm dying to read it now, the way you describe it.
Is that the subject matter you'll be talking about at Outbound, or what's your topic?
So my Outbound, I've got 2 keynotes that I'm doing. A little different, both of them different angles. So one of them is finding your brave. And so, we're looking there at 3 different principles around how to find your brave today, and how do we navigate this path of uncertainty that we're all on, and move toward absolute certainty. So moving from uncertainty to absolute certainty, and it's by finding your brave. So that's one. And then the second one is selling to big business. And that's 5 principles that salesmen need to know in order to sell bigger, higher.
Can you give us one principle of the 5 principles?
Yeah. Let me think. I've got the second one in my head. So if we looked at selling to bigger business, so there's 5 principles there. And one of them is I kind of do things back to front. One of them is closing loses opportunities.
Ooh, say that again?
Closing loses opportunities.
Elaborate, please.
So, what's the biggest part of the sales conversation or the sales process that kind of gets the spider senses going with people? It's closing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's prospecting. Prospecting is definitely one of them, but it's also closing. And followed closely behind closing is objections.
Mm-hmm.
And Gong, the company Gong, the revenue intelligence company Gong, they listen to 94,000 closing sales conversations or whatever. And what they found was that the most successful sales calls did not happen at the end of the call. They happened at the beginning and in the middle. And so what happens is because there's so much angst around that, and because salespeople kind of miss the whole chunk in the middle of, that we start off strong and we make great rapport, and then the buyer will say something like, well, okay, how much is it? Bang, you've just commoditized yourself. So it's like drama. It's like acting, like you've got, act 1, act 2, act 3. So you've got the beginning, the middle, and the end, but it's the middle part that gets missed out because it's the middle part where the tension's created. And so salespeople don't go to the middle. They start at the beginning and go straight to the end. So we need to look at, okay, how can we create tension enough? So like you said, the buyer says, where do I sign?
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of all of this is that if you're, and this is the conscious selling part of it, is that if your mindset around closing is based on contribution, but not from this give away the farm, discounting, I'm going to walk on eggshells because I'm going to make sure that I do everything right for the client and bugger me. It's like, if you realize that that transformation does not happen until that transaction happens, then that's the moment where it's almost like a sacred moment where you've got to allow the buyer space to process that decision or to process the next step toward their transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you've got this whole mindset about closing and what's the right pitch and what's the right question, and it's all about you, and you're so in your head that you are not contributing anything to your buyer's growth at all.
Or listening.
Totally. Or listening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love the going to the middle, because what I think about when I think about going to the middle is, again, this is an improv thing. We often talk about, when it comes to improvising a comedy scene, don't start at the beginning. Don't be linear, because it's just boring.
Correct.
It's kind of like hi, how are you? Good. How are you? And I'm not making fun of you right now. That's how improv, like new improv performers, they're like, that's what they do on stage. It's like, hello, how are you today? And it's boring. And so what we try to do is get them like, all right, just pretend the introduction never existed and start at the middle of the scene as it's unfolding. And the people watching are like, they lean in because they want to know what's going on, because they missed the beginning that they're used to hearing anyway, but tuning out. And so it just makes it so much interesting when you go straight to the middle. It's just juicier.
It's juicier. It's colorful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the sales conversation that I was having yesterday in the car with a new potential coaching client. And it was an interesting conversation because I was driving and I was 100% focused on what she was saying. And the beginning is kind of like, hey, and it's thanks for taking the time to call me. And I, this is kind of what I want. But it took a little while to get to the point of some things that she revealed as she was talking. And then a few questions I asked that made her cry. And by the time we got a little deeper, I didn't close her, but because I wanted to reflect on some things and I wanted her to reflect on some things. And I just didn't want to take that special in-depth conversation that we had and kind of almost felt like cheapening it by going, okay, this is how much it is. And are you ready? I can send you an email with all the detail. Like, it just didn't feel like the right time. So I just gave her something to do yesterday, something to do today. And I set that next step of, I'll call you after my podcast. And then we can reflect on what we talked about and talk about what the next steps are to commitment. Because it just felt a little bit, I mean, I see what you're saying is that point of most of the time in sales conversations, we're like, I want to close it. It'll feel so good to close it and get them to sign on the dotted line. But then we miss out on the juicy.
And it's the long game. It is the long game we're playing, you know, and I share this story back when I was at Xerox back in corporate. And I had this university that I had been looking after, and I sold the big $500,000 pieces of kit for the print rooms. And so I had this account, and for the whole year I was kind of touching base and going in, and, you know, we dropped a few different proposals with some incentives throughout the year, and no. Anyway, so it was the last day of the financial year. And so I got called into my manager's office, and you know, the end of financial year, they were really numbers. And so his boss was also in the room, and they said, you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to close them. And this is what we want you to offer them, because it's been going on for too long. And so I'm like, okay, so drafted up the contract, went down into the, met them. They were both in the room, both the director and the print room manager. And I'm sitting there, and, you know, we had a little bit of chit chat to start with. And I said, you know what I got here? It's that time of year. It's the end of the financial year. And I said, but I'll tell you what. And I ripped it up. I said, I'm not going to ask you to sign it. And the director looked at me, he leaned forward, and he said, I'm so glad to hear that. He said, if you had have asked us one more time, you would have never, ever got your foot in here again.
Wow.
I got the deal less than 2 months later. So just, you know, and why did I do that? My intuition kicked in big time. So why I did that, it was strategically done. It wasn't, you know, the reason why I did it, I could sense the body language.
Yeah.
And I also knew, over working with them for a year, they were conservative people. And they had this, you know, I probably didn't realize it at the time because it was intuition, but they have been working with salespeople for so many years. Buyers are not stupid. They know that if something's dangled this month, it can be dangled next month, you know. So it was, you know, we've got to respect the intelligence of our buyers sometimes and think, okay, what is important to them and why? And respect that and work with it. And, you know, it may take you a couple of months longer to get it, but you'll get it. So, yeah, we are playing the long game.
To your point, you have to trust your intuition and your instincts when you're, like, anytime I go to, especially with coaching versus training. Coaching is a much different sale to me because a lot of times it's a more personal. A lot of times people are taking money out of their pocket to pay for coaching versus having their bosses pay for it. So the emotions are a little bit high. Sometimes the sales cycle is a little bit longer, but you got to be able to read the moment. And I've been in those where I'm like, this is going to take a few conversations to get to know them and for them to, you know, I had one recently and I knew, I mean, I did all the things. I followed all the frameworks knowing he wasn't ready, but I stuck to it for a reason because he wanted to still talk to me. Right. And I knew I wasn't going to close him today. Yeah. Maybe in a year, but he wasn't ready right now for a variety of reasons that made complete sense. And I wasn't going to invalidate that. And on that second call that we got on, which was, he knew what that call was. That call was, are you in or are you out? And he's like, hey, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not going to do this right now. And I'm like, and that's fine.
That's fine. I'm here when you're ready, and I'll stay in touch with you until that point in time.
Right. And it's staying in the moment with them and their journey and honoring that and respecting that. And then you have people who are like, how do I work with you? Can I give you a credit card right now? Right. And so you just go with the flow of where people are. Yeah. And you're going to win either way. Some you're going to win faster than others.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some you're going to have to overcome rejection and others you're going to have to overcome acceptance. It's like,
I love that. Overcome acceptance. I love that.
So true.
I love that.
And as we hear from a lot of our fantastic other sales leaders we have on this show, you have to really actually care about the person you're talking to instead of caring only about the money that you are making off the person that you're talking to. And that's a bit of a journey for some salespeople.
Yeah, because we all know that, you know, we buy stuff on emotion and we back it up with logic. And too many, and once again, this is not a negative against salespeople, it's purely because they don't know what they don't know. And you know, they're not privileged enough to, you know, have gone through coach training or, you know, anything like that, where you start to get to the deeper human behavioral level. And so, you know, when you're able to have a conversation with a buyer where you can elicit their emotional buying criteria as well as their financial or their logical or their, you know, commercial buying criteria, getting to that emotional buying criteria, that is where the tension, the right kind of tension, is created. And that happens in the middle.
Well, we're sad we're not going to see you in person at Outbound. Is it okay for us to be sad?
We're going to stay up all night.
We're going to stay up all night.
I didn't realize until we had a conversation with Jeb earlier today about Outbound just kind of goes on and on and on and on all night long.
It does, doesn't it? It's so cool. So we're going live. So I've teed up the studio in the city, and we're going live with a panel. I think we're going in after Victor. So Sales After Dark, and then Bosch straight to Melbourne direct, where Oprah introduces Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz, and not quite.
Maybe the people, maybe the salespeople.
Maybe Victor. We talked about this before about a handoff. Maybe Victor will allow us to do like an Olympic torch handoff.
Oh, that would be awesome.
How funny would that be?
That would be awesome.
All right, we got to work that out with Victor.
We'll figure something there.
I'm not sure that real fire would be really a good idea, but maybe like a LED version of the fire.
Gosh. Well, before we let you go, we got a couple signature questions to ask you. And before we get to the signature questions,
hang on, I've just got to have
another swig. You should have another swig of Bailey's. Well, we get you ready for that. First of all, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about you, get your book, what is the best way for them to do that?
So The Art of Commercial Conversations is my book, and it's on Amazon. And then my Conscious Selling Masterclass is conscioussellingmasterclass.com. And cool. So people can register for that if they want to.
Is that a live class or a self-paced class? How does that work?
It's just a 1.5 hour masterclass. Okay. I think it's with me. So conscioussellingmasterclass.com, and that's based on The Art of Commercial Conversations.
Fantastic.
So, and then the other is LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook.
She's everywhere.
All the things.
I'm everywhere.
She's everywhere. She is all the things. Okay, so people can reach out you to that way, and then we got a couple final questions for you.
First question, Bernadette, is dun dun dun. How would you define the word sexy?
Look, I'm already picturing it. A man in a suit, holding a red rose, smiling at me with a twinkle in his eye.
Oh, that is sexy.
Pretty sexy.
Nobody has
love a man in a good suit.
Yes. It's true. Does he have a pocket square or a tie?
He has. I'm actually picturing a red tie with a white shirt. How about that? It's probably really boring, but that's what comes up.
Red shirt.
Does he have hair or is he bald?
Oh, he's bald.
What is this?
I have to say that.
Because your husband's bald.
I haven't figured all of this out yet because my husband is not yet bald. So
not yet.
I'm getting some great hope in case he goes bald because his father doesn't have a lot of hair, let's say.
Well, there's quite a few sexy bald men at Outbound. I'm just saying, and sexy voiced bald men. We'll leave them nameless.
There you go.
You can figure it out.
There you go.
All right. Let's keep it on track, ladies.
It's getting hot in here.
Hot, yeah. And Bernadette, the next two are a little bit less heated, if you will. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh, number one, just be you. But the other one that comes to mind is, spread your wings further. Yeah.
Spread your wings further like a butterfly.
Or an eagle.
Or my favorite book is Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Ooh, okay.
Note that the eagle and the seagull probably eat the butterfly if they can.
Stop it. Do the next question.
Sorry. Last question, Bernadette. Is there any advice you wish you had been given?
Back yourself more.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Great
advice. That's advice I wish that's awesome.
And know you are enough. Yeah.
Damn, that's about to make me cry right there.
Yeah. Decades to figure that one out.
That's what my tattoo says.
Same
tattoos.
100%. I'm hoping I can teach my daughter to back herself a lot sooner than I did.
I like that. Back yourself up.
Yeah, totally.
It has been so delightful having you on our show today, and we are so thankful that you got up so early in the morning.
Oh, that's fine.
And you're ready to go. You're ready to crush the day now.
I'm good to go. I am totally good to go. The sun is now, it's pouring raining, but the light is out there now and it's not pitch black like it was before. But it's been wonderful. I've loved it. We're going to have to do it again.
Yes, we will. And we will see you soon at Outbound. Thank you again, Bernadette McClelland, for being on The Women Your Mother Warned You About. And thank you, Warners, for listening to this episode of The Women Your Mother Warned You About. I'm Gina Tremarco with Sales Gravy, and
I'm Rachel Pitts, the singing lender. And you can find all the information you need to know about us at womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com. Anything left?
Just a big thank you to Sales Gravy, as usual, for taking us ladies on and sponsoring this show and letting us do the thing that we do. If you want to up-level your game in sales, check out Sales Gravy University. That is super cool. So it's salesgravy.university. And if you want to attend Outbound, you still can get virtual tickets, which why wouldn't you? Because you can see Bernadette that way and you can watch all the replays from it. So you can check that out at outboundconference.com and use our special code Warners100 and save $100. That's it. We're out for now, Warners. See ya.
This really will get serious soon.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. I don't think anybody wants it to be serious.